Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, I'm back recording after a significant break, 2.5 weeks. Longest break I think I've had on YouTube. And I just needed to recharge my batteries a bit because, as I explained before, pre-Christmas we had a lot of videos I shot that were all shown fairly close together, and quite unintentionally because of lateness of arrival of certain kits. At least they did arrive in time for Christmas, which is the main thing. But it did mean that there was quite a lot of intensity of videos in the week up to Christmas, a couple of weeks up to Christmas, and Christmas week itself. Never planned that way. It was planned to be more spaced out. So I just felt that I'd been going at it filming stuff. I just needed a break. Bit of a rest, recharge the batteries, have a rethink, and most important of all, do some modelling. So, if you follow the channel closely, you probably know from my posts that I've put up. We've done quite a few decent photographs, I think, showing the progress with the Mosquito, which will be great relief to people like Chris Jones and many others who've been saying, please get on with this Mosquito. And they're quite right to push me, quite right indeed. Because we are coming up to almost 2 years of it at it, and I've not been building it physically for 2 years. It's just been sitting there. I've just been so busy with all this other stuff with YouTube and what have you. So I thought this was a time for just stop the YouTube and do some model making. So I mentioned previously, it's a little bit difficult for me because I can't just, having had this big break, really, when I've not been making a model for about a year, 18 months, really, I feel I make them to a fairly high standard, not as high as many other people. I'm not trying to be clever or bragging out. I know my place, you know what I mean? But a fairly high standard. But I really find it hard to switch it on. So when I start, I have to... It's good in a way that this is something that is sort of very fine and detailed and internal, because it's kind of got me back into the thought patterns I need, the sort of strategies, if you like, I need. Sorry, I've just got a scalpel blade peeking out. We don't want that. Let's just move that to safety. We've just got to get into a way of thinking that planning how I'm going to paint things, planning which order I'm going to do it in, and so on and so forth. But it's been quite an eye-opener. So what I've done, obviously, is I've done the majority of this, pretty much finished the cockpit section, the central section. I haven't done the side of the cockpit yet that goes on the fuselage sides. That's still to come. But so it's the 32nd scale Tamiya Mosquito. Obviously, this is their kit number. What do they call it? You know, it hasn't got the kit number on the front. That's really weird, isn't it? Oh no, 60326. A wonderful model kit. Really, I can't strongly recommend it highly enough. But going into the fine detail like this in a way that's, if I'd gone straight into painting the fuselage or something like that, I think I would struggle because I haven't quite got my brain back into gear, if you know what I mean. I've got to sort of play myself in a little bit, and this has been perfect for it. But I tell you what, I'm sure one or two of you who know me and know how awfully slow a builder I am. There's two reasons for that. One is I over sort of think it and over plan it a little bit, perhaps. And the other is I like to take my time and like to get it as perfect as I can. And when I say perfect, I don't mean in terms of weathering and you know, those skills come over time. Nobody develops them quickly, I don't think. Or figure painting either. They're not perfect figures, you know. But trying to get the basics right. Not get any glue anywhere that it shouldn't be, and paint it carefully and accurately. Fine detail painting. Now this brings me, first of all, before I go into showing you all the details, it brings me up to this subject that I talked about before, which I think is worth going over again. Now I've got a bit more experience in this particular kit especially. About the instrumentation set that I got, the zoom set from Edward. Now, I want to make it very clear before I make these comments, this is not anti-Edward sentiment at all. It is really about not trying to use a broad brush and applying it to all models, because a lot of us do this, me included. And I think that one of the learnings I've already got from this model build so far. I'm only up to stage 10, but there's quite a lot of parts and quite a lot of work's gone into it. But it's taught me already to be more circumspect and considered before I go rushing in and buying aftermarket. Now, we've touched on this before in this scenario, I know. But here's the proof. I'm going to zoom you in on my Edward zoom set. You can see that I have used some of it, but precious little. In fact, I have only used one part, which is the radio set. Not the radio set, the G set, the navigation radar. The rest, I haven't touched. Now the radio set. Now why is that? Is it because there's two basic reasons? Sorry, I'm just going to move our friend over here. There's two basic reasons for this, and it's worth going through and having a chat about it, especially in the in the private chat that we have. Sorry, I beg your pardon, not private chat, live chat, I should say. What is it that we buy these for? Well, we buy them to enhance the kit, don't we? And I think this is the point of what I'm going to say today, really. In some respects, it's given me more respect for these, and also at the same time less, but I'll explain what I mean. So it's given me more respect in that it's reminded me that, and I've said before quite recently, that I think that these, not the best ever that Edward have produced, but the recent ones they've come out with are a lot better. They're really, really nice now. I think they've taken a bit of a step up in the last sort of year, really. So I'm not trying to put you off these zoom sets, these instrument sets, or 3D instruments either, etc. at all. I'm not generalising here. It's very important. This is exactly what the thrust of my conversation today is. It's about being more focused, being more aware of what the kit involves and what we need to do to it to make it, to maximise it. Now, you remember, just going back to the beginning, I said it, I'm now up to 2 years, which is absurd. A quite ridiculous situation, partly down to a lack of time, but also, and this is the important bit for modelers, for other modelers, a lot of you have said to me, and I know Jason at Model Kit Stuff, a friend of mine, he's got this kit and he's sort of started it a little bit and put it on the shelf. It's very easy to get intimidated, and I have. God knows, it's 2 years. One of the main intimidations for me, and the main reservations that's been holding me back from getting on with it, has been this indecision about which bits to use for what, and it's just nightmarish. Thinking in my mind, well, I really want to max it out on this kit. I've got to, and you instantly, as I did, went out and bought all this extra stuff without making assumptions. Rephrase that. I was making assumptions. I made assumptions that it's going to be better than the Tamiya product. I saw a video, it's not a recent one, somebody went and said, oh, I'm going to build the Tamiya Mosquito, and he did build it. This is a while ago. I'm not going to use those kit tyres, for example, which are very clever. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get resin, and I took one look at this, and this is one area where I did get it right, and I took one look at this tyre design where they have this clever, the side walls come in and then you build up the treads in sections, and you end up with a seamless, beautiful tyre. Now if you want a different tread, then fair enough, but if you want the same tread or similar tread, and people say I'm just going to go to aftermarket, I can't be bothered with that, well, I think that's crazy, to be honest. Tamiya have got some of probably the best model engineers in the world, and they created in this kit two things that were very special. That was the main one, actually, that was new. We'd never seen it before. Absolute genius, quite frankly. Now, I've not got to that yet, but I've already had a good look at it and thinking, this doesn't need resin, yeah? Not for those parts. So, again, a lot of us think, we just get into this, I'll just go with what I know, I'll just go with resin. Well, actually, this will give you, I think, a better look, and without the extra expense, or this problem of having to then, and this is the issue that put me off and why I've been so nervous about starting this kit, how am I going to make that fit in there, and is that going to go, is it going to need huge modifications, which are all going to put me off, especially if it's really problematic. It's not the sort of build I need at the moment. And I think it's something that a lot of us, most of us, are probably doing this, making assumptions about what the kit needs and doesn't need. Now, as I said at the beginning, I don't think that I was wise in buying this. I don't think I was wise in buying it. Even on the G screen, which I'll show you in a second. I'll show you now. Let's zoom you in. Enough of me talking. Let's just whet your appetite by going in closer. If you look at the G screen, this is actually a hybrid of three things. It's a hybrid of the Tamiya, the Edward, and some scratch building as well. So this is the little radar screen that's on right there in the background. So we can get a bit closer perhaps, because it isn't big, is it? So if you look very carefully, the knobs weren't realistic when I looked at photographs, so I thought the knobs were just too flat. So I actually built that knob that's at the bottom right on the screen, the radar screen. I actually built that out of a cocktail stick, would you believe? It's a section of the actual cylinder of the cocktail stick. Then we've got the Edward actual face for the G screen, for where all the knobs and switches are. But the actual screen itself is the Tamiya decal. And this works beautifully in harmony together, I think. Classic case of a little bit of scratch, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, using your imagination and not going all in on one or the other. Especially when it's something that needs lifting and needs to be, it's quite an important feature, if you like, of that cockpit. So that's the one I have used, the one part I have used. But on the others, and this is the important part of the story, so any of you that have got this kit, or any of the 132 Tamiya Warbird type models they did between 2009 and 2017, I don't think you need these. I don't think you need them, because if you're looking, if you're going to go, let's go really close and look at these by comparison, and then I will show you the final instruments that I've got, and you tell me which you think is best. Now these are really good. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not criticising them or saying I would never buy these. No, I'm not saying that. I would buy them. I just don't think that these particular kits are the right kits, because if you look at the dials and things, you can't read any information. They're not that fine, and they are flat, so they are a little bit characterless. But to be perfectly honest with you, if Tamiya had not done such an amazing job with their design, I mean the painting and things like that and the colour call-outs here are really nice. They've got that spot on at Edward. It's just that when I show you the finished sort of article, you realise that it's not the same. Now whether this is going to come out the same on the camera as it does to the human eye, because on the human eye, the light chalk and cheese, I've got to be honest. Now if you have got 48 scale kits, for example, or other kits, not these particular Tamiya ones I'm talking about. Now, why are they so different? It's because they've got these, and it's hard to actually show you by showing you the decal because you can't see anything, but you have a decal that goes on the back of the clear lenses for the instrument bezels, dials, I should say. And then the bezel front piece, the actual fascia, you then get your clear part goes through the dial open orifices, if you like, and you've got this decal on the back, and it all sounds a bit weird, but when you see it in action, as you will in a second, it's incredible, and it's definitely groundbreaking, and more so to the eye than to the photographs, because when I uploaded those photographs, pretty decent photos, I thought, yeah, it looks epic, it looks nice, everybody's given me lovely, very positive comments, thank you very much to all of you, but it still, to me, didn't look as good as it does to my naked eye, which has this three-dimensional real dial appearance to it, which doesn't quite capture that on the camera. So let's have a little look at it. And you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm going to zoom you in, I'm going to come in as close as I can. Again, I'm not confident the camera's going to fully give you the 100% effect I'm talking about here. Here we are. I think this Canon camera's probably got a better chance. But the dials are just so real looking to the human eye, and in a way that those flat the flat Edward ones can't really do. That's the Edward ones. They're good, they're not poor, I'm not suggesting that for a second, they're really nice, but when you see this is on another level, and it just gives it this real dial feel. Now having sat in a Spitfire and actually had to read these instruments, I can tell you that yeah, it's given me a slightly added perspective perhaps. So you know, it's actually another case of we're automatically rushing out and buying this stuff, gilding the lily, because we're almost programmed in our heads to do it actually. And I just on these particular kits, you're wasting a resource. You're wasting money, you're wasting time, and you're having to, of course, do a lot of extra work. You've got to remove all the detail on the surface that's on some of these panels and things, like the radio, for example, or the G radar. And then you've got to put this flat piece of photo etch on, and it doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as good. Now, I did the comparison before I actually built this up. I didn't build this up and say, oh, I'll just say it's better, you know. I was perfectly happy to go either way. I don't care, I bought it now, you know, and I've used some of it already. But on all the others, I thought, no, it doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as good as that. I'm not going to go with it. Now, all I'm saying to you moving forward, my personal advice, and it's just my opinion, of course, I wouldn't buy any of this, or 3D instrument sets, you know, 3D printer instrument sets from whoever, for these particular kits. They really need none of that. I wouldn't bother at all. You're wasting your money, and you're adding lots of work and trickiness and potential for things going wrong. It just doesn't need it. Their system works perfectly, and it's just filled me with admiration for the product even more than I had before. Now I've actually lived through building that cockpit up, and it's just incredible. Now there are one or two areas which are not great. So what I'm saying is, don't let me put you off these for other kits at 132 or other scales. They're very good. They're very good. The ones in my Sea Harrier weren't the best though. The quality was a bit iffy, but as I said, the new ones from Edouard are really a lot better now. They're really nice. I know it's either that or you get 3D resin printed, which are like a decal stroke 3D thing, aren't they? For these instrument sets. So I'm not saying don't get them, but I'm just saying check first before you go rushing in, because you might end up. I've seen now a couple of videos. What I tend to do, if I'm honest, is I tend to do a review or I do a bit of building. When I finished up like that, I finished it. Then I go and watch what everybody else did. I don't watch them first, because I don't want to copy somebody else and be led. I want to discover it for myself. And I've now seen a couple of builds where they're using these. I'm a right nightmare having to cut it off and then sand it down in front of me. It doesn't quite fit the same, and on it goes. You know, creating a world of hell really that you don't need to create. On these particular ones, I can't stress that. You know, I'm only talking about these particular experiences I've had with the Tamiya 32nd. So obviously I built the Spitfire before. I should have known really. I should have known after the Spitfire. Same thing happened with that. I ended up using the Tamiya one, and it was brilliant. I think I did do a little bit of a combo again, but I ended up with a big fret of this. So I say to all the viewers, I'm going to be talking about in the future going to memberships, and there's going to be benefits for members. So if I get things like this that I've not used it, I might say to the members, if you cover my postage, I'll let you have that for nothing. To be honest, I'm not sure I'm going to use any more of this. So, and I say to you now, I could have easily have not used that one piece. So if you've got this particular kit, this 32nd Mosquito, if you would like this fret, the bits I don't use, which will be 99% of it, I'll send it to you if you just cover me postage. It's going to cost about £2.40, I suppose, isn't it? As a little package or something. That's it. So if you cover that, you can have that for free. So I'll just say that as an offer to you. You know, if you bodge up, if you have a problem and bodge up your, you know, you get some adhesive on it or something terrible goes wrong like that. We all make mistakes and have these horrible accidents. Not all accidents are happy little accidents. Some are really very unhappy. So if you need to use something like that, yeah, just drop me a line and I say if somebody wants it, first come first served, you can have that. Right. So moving on. In terms of the learnings, what I've found so far and what my experience has been so far, a couple of things. I would say that the Tamiya figures, which are beautifully, they're really cleverly designed into the kit in terms of, as I mentioned to somebody else the other day, I said, I couldn't believe I managed to get the seatbelts to stick on without real stress, to be honest, which is not what I was expecting. This is where you've got the, on the Pilot, you've got the shoulder straps coming through, which are the PE Tamiya ones, meeting the figure. And on this I thought doing the actual, the fabric belts I don't think was going to work very well, or not as well in my opinion. But the rest are the fabric belts. So when you look at got a combo again here. So you've got the Tamiya standard PE seat belts on the Pilot's shoulders coming through from the armour plate at the back. and then sticking onto the pilot figure. And then over on the navigator seat, these are purely the HGW stroke Edward set of fabric belts, which I preferred, when you can see the belts. So in other words, if the pilot wasn't going to be in, if I'd chosen not to have the pilot, I would have gone with the Edward HGW belts and not used the Tamiya at all. But it works better here because it's really designed for it, and it just looks right, I think. So again, a bit of a combo going on here, but it depends. It's all about planning your build, I think. And I think if I'd have been slightly better at my planning, I could have avoided some cost here, certainly on those instrument panels anyway, because I just don't think they were necessary at all. Just turn it around a little bit for you here. You've got the bits underneath. This is where the guns will be going through, of course. All I would say, in terms of my overall impression so far, if you look just where my finger is, this is the front gun rail that holds the guns in. This is the part that dropped on the carpet. And the carpet monster took a big bite out of it, didn't even know I dropped it, and then realised it was missing about 20 minutes later, and I'd trodden on it and it was smashed into 3 pieces. So the vertical rail that's going up, that was gone, and the rest of it was smashed in 2 right down the centre. So that was a real mess. So I had to get the old super glue out, which I don't really like, but anyway. I did this nice wood effect. I'm not sure how well it's coming out on the camera. The wood effect's quite nice. Now I haven't gone crazy. There is some weathering here. Well, I haven't gone crazy with it at all. There's a few chips, as you can see, on the back plate, the armour plating, and a few bits of weathering on things like the seat, and just gentle wear, not madness, you know. Because at the end of the day, this is not going to be seeing a lot of it anyway. You'll only see the highlights. I'll tell you one thing I did do though. If you look here, this is the drift sight, which is supposed to, it's like an eyepiece here, like an eye cup. And it's supposed to have a hole in it. It doesn't have any hole in it, which I thought looked really stupid when I saw the real one. So I'm not sure if you can tell from this angle, but I actually drilled, can you see it there? Yeah, I think you can. I actually drilled a hole for the eyepiece. You can't see it that well, so I suppose that's why Tamiya didn't bother, because you sort of see it from a different angle. You don't really notice. But just for my own satisfaction, I made an eyepiece. So that's that, really. Yeah, I hope you find it interesting. What I will say, that the only thing I wasn't that impressed by, the pluses and the minuses. On the pluses, whoops, it says don't drop it. That's not very wise. The figures are a little bit softly moulded. It's not the best. They're not the best, sharpest figures that Tamiya have ever done, like some of their action figures are, military figures. So that one area that could have been better. But the actual things like their arms, they're perfect. His arm fell perfectly to grip the stick of the controls. It's absolute perfection, and I think that really that was one of the best things about the kit. The way that it just drops in, everything works perfectly. It's the same here. This is John Allen Broadley, who's the navigator. It's Charles Percy Pickard, the group captain, of course, that's flying the aircraft. Sadly, neither of them came back from the mission. But you can see here, again, the positioning of the leg position relative to the ladder, it all works perfectly. He's now completed, by the way, because he's got his mask dangling there. Oops! I didn't quite get the blue tack on enough of that. Yeah, he's got his oxygen mask is dangling, and it's really nice. And he's got his map in his hand. All looking pretty good. Got his goggles on. Got the bands to retain the goggles. That's all done as well. Absolutely brilliant. So there we go. So that's kind of where we're at, really. So I thought I'd give you a quick peep at what we've got. Again, Pickard getting his mask on was a little bit of a challenge because I kind of forgot it. Some of you sharp-eyed amongst you may have noticed in the photos I submitted that I'd missed the mask. Just missed it completely, to be quite honest. And it was only afterwards I looked at the photographs and thought, I forgot the mask. And then I found the mask in the little tray of the spare parts, all pre-painted and done, you know. But getting that on was tricky because I had to sort of hold it in 2 different places and to let the adhesive set. Quite tricky, quite fiddly. Quite fiddly. Anyway, I hope you're liking what you see so far. I'm not going to go banging on about this for too long. Next bit is to do the guns, so that's there'll probably be an update in a month's time, and there'll be some more progress. And in the meantime, I've got a few videos to shoot for you kit reviews and things like that. So hopefully that'll be something you'll enjoy. And we shall see a bit more of this Mosquito and see how we're getting on. You see around me, the desk has got, I don't know, there's about 20 or 30 different paints and things there. That's actually only about 2/3 of what I have been using. Some have gone back in the box. And yeah, I've been using the Tamiya CA super glue, so I know don't like using it, but it doesn't affect me as badly as the other brands that I've used. So it's going pretty well. We've got the figures ready, and now for me, the sort of overall picture looking forward is we don't now have this huge hurdle I've got to overcome of these fiddly things and these indecisions. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to use the master model guns. They're fantastic. So they will be used aftermarket. I may or may not use the aftermarket gun feed, ammunition feed chutes. Haven't decided yet on that. Still work in progress there. But that's where we're going next. So that'll become apparent pretty soon. And then we'll be putting all that together and putting it into the actual fuselage and working on the fuselage, finalising the sides with all the radio equipment and oxygen equipment and wiring looms and things like that. So that's coming very soon. So please stay tuned. Hope you thought that was interesting. I know I've been away for a while. Probably got a few of you worried. We will be talking about the channel now. It's going to operate in the future, probably in February. So it's going to be sort of mid-late Feb when you see the next update on the Mosquito. And I'm now going to say number 5, number 6. So it makes it easy to follow, especially when you're not watching this. You might be watching this in a year or 2 years' time. So I'm going to try and make it easy for people to follow. But I would just say this. If you're impressed by what you've seen, I would just say that it's tricky. There's a lot of fine painting has gone on to create that. Now, I want to just make this point before I go. Actually, in the book, and I was using this as my Bible. This is how modelers are different. And people say to me, "Well, why does it take you that long? I love your work, but why does it take that long?" And I'll tell you why. It's because I build in a completely different way to most people do on aircraft. I mean, I haven't invented a new way of building. But let me just zoom in on this, and I'll just explain what I mean, because this is not untypical of what I've seen now. Now I've looked at what other modelers have done. They've done it very much like this. So this is the Brett Green book with Chris Wochop, and he builds it in a very sort of normal way. But when I say normal, it's not normal for me. So they just build up everything. They build up the entire cockpit, as you can see, and then the sides, and and they only seem to start painting once they get to the sides, and they've got to then because they're about to put it together. And then quite late, having built everything, they then do the painting. Now this makes for a much faster build. He's talking here about the brilliance of the Tamiya instruments, which I've just been waxing lyrical about as well there. But can you see that it's only at this point they start doing the building quite late. It's all built. The painting, sorry. The building is all done, and they only start painting later on. Now there's an upside to this, and there's a big downside to it, and I'll tell you my take on it. This now suddenly it looks all great, but I look at this and I see things that I wouldn't do myself. That's not a criticism, just that I do it differently. There are parts here that haven't got paint on, or very minimal paint in some areas. It hasn't had that quite the same detailed approach that I've got, but that's because they're trying to build this in a reasonable time frame, in their defence. And you can see here that it's all like mass production. It's all like spray it all quick, and many of you do this. And people like Phil Flory. I'm in the Flory forum. I'm a massive fan of Phil Flory. Despite what some people seem to think, I don't know. I think Phil Flory is. I'm not saying he's the greatest builder in the world, but he's so good at sharing his knowledge and imparting advice and tips and getting the job done really rapidly and with a brilliant result. That you look at it and you think, wow, really nice work. He has a similar style to this, and I think a lot of modelers do, on aircraft in particular. Now, I started my high quality model making. I started like everybody with Spitfires and what have you from Matchbox and Airfix. But when I started doing the more expensive kits, I started building these Formula 1 racing cars. And it's now made me adapt my style of building from Formula 1 racing cars and things of that ilk into aircraft. Now, this does two things. There's a plus side and a downside. The plus side is you get this incredible detail. I look at this now and I can see, yeah, they've done things that, you know, your eye will catch, but there's lots of things that they haven't done. They haven't done some of the fine detail painting. They've even missed out a couple of parts, actually. I won't go into details. It sounds like I'm criticising. I'm not doing it. But they've done it against the clock. They're trying to get this done. They're filming it and they're trying to make this book and get it out. They've probably built that in a few weeks, so who am I to criticise? It's taken me 2 years. But the fundamental difference is this. I build it as a unitary construction. I don't build it all up. I looked at that and I thought, but, you know, I build it more like Tamiya tell you to build it in some respects, because they tell you to build this and paint this and paint this and do this and do this. That's green and that's brown and that's red. You know, this is white, this switch here is white and da-da-da. They're not doing that, they're just going and then they're just doing, yeah, that'll be noticeable. We'll do that one, we'll do that, we'll do that. Yeah, it looks great. You won't see the rest. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, especially on some of the smaller scales, you know, 48 scale or whatever. But I'm building this as a unitary construction, and everything is a sub-assembly for me. So everything was sub-assembled, as you saw from some of the photographs I've done. Sub-assembled instrument panel, which looks like a finished instrument panel, but it's on its own. The drift sight was a sub-assembly. The G radar was a sub-assembly. The navigator seat was, was a sub-assembly, and so forth. And then I very carefully bring it together and then glue it together at the end. So there's really almost nothing left to do. And I'm not doing it, but it's slower because I'm doing it individual assemblies. As I say, kind of like, not quite exactly, but very like the instructions tell you to. And I'm not talking about order. Don't get bogged down about sometimes the order and the instructions. For example, the first job I did was my figures, yeah, because they are critical, and it shows you to do those right at the end of the build. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know why they did that. What they should have done is done it first, I think, like I did, and had it in the instructions saying, optional figure use. If you wish to include the figures, this is the guide for the figures. And that should have been number one, I think. It should have been construction, the construction page, section 1. And then skip this if you're not going to use them, fair enough. But to put them at the end, you know, because you need to have, you can't, there's no point in having it as the last stage of the build, because you couldn't do it like that. You'll never get him in, for one thing, you never get them in. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So Tamiya don't always get it all perfectly right, you know. So I took one look at that and thought, these figures are which everything else is going to surround around them. And they're going to be very critical as I'm going to go with them. And things like the map, well, he doesn't, that's not the way it was depicted. He was depicted, one of the options was the navigator sitting looking at the map in his seat, and I just adapted that so he was carrying it up the stairs, you know, which needed some changes to the map itself, and cut his arms off and all this kind of thing, his optional arms. But this is the fundamental difference, and this is why my builds take a lot longer. But I have to say, when I do these assemblies and bring them together, it's very satisfying. It's not just grinding on. It's like grind, taking forever, and then it suddenly seems to come together at the end of each sort of section of the aircraft, and then ultimately at the end of the build, it will seem to probably finish very quickly, because I'll be putting all these things together and click, done, you know. But it's not quicker. I'm not going to pretend to you that my way is quicker. My way is much slower. And it's horses for courses, and for the individual modeler to choose their own way, you know. I can certainly see on a lesser kit, if this was a Revell version, I would be adopting the same sort of way that they've done it, and the way that most people do. Get some paint on it, do the highlights of what you think will be seen, and then job done. But this is such a phenomenal premium model as a kit. It's got to be done, really, you know. It's got to be done. And I'm doing it as if it was an F1 car, really. Now, one or two people said, oh, it looks very clean. And as I say, there is some weathering, but I think you can over-weather it, and you're not going to see that weathering inside in the cockpit. And I've made this mistake before with the Mustang, where I did this extremely ornate, fancy floor with chipping where the heels of the pilot were. Never saw it again. Never seen it again. Pointless. So I'm not into shortcuts, but things like weathering are kind of gilding the lily in areas where you won't see it. Then that really is utterly pointless. And it's there is weathering here. It's actually got a wash on it. It's got a flooring wash on it, and it's also got some of the Tamiya, what do you call it? The line, accent line, the enamel pin wash. I think it's absolutely fine. I think it's just right, to be honest. And this, when people have said, "Wow, this is," one guy said it's absolutely stunning model building, or was that effect, which is very kind of him. Was it Chris? Might be Chris Usher, Chris Jones. And many comments from many of you like that. But it's kind of it's a product of the way I've gone about it in a way. It's everything is a little small battle, you know. I'm not trying to do it all in one go, although I have done the pre-spraying of a lot of the kit where there's the cockpit green, which is most of the interior of the aircraft. I've pre-sprayed bits like that, but then I'm going to be very carefully, finitely detailing in all these other components, because I just want it to be something that I'll look at, a bit like the Spitfire, and think, I really nailed it, you know. And as I say, this is a kit that's now 200 quid or more in the UK, and I think it merits it. I was given this as a gift for my big birthday 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, and I'm determined to make it worthy of the very high cost, very generous gift it was. I'm going to make it absolutely hopefully the best kit I've ever done, but certainly up there with the motorbike. You know, motorbike was the same attitude. See, that I mentioned it. That has shaped my approach to building in many ways, because that's why that was so impressive, was because of the sort of, imagine it like a real Formula One factory in miniature. I'm going about it like that. I'm doing little pre-constructed, pre-building these unitary construction sections and then bringing them together as a final step. Not trying to just build as I go, sort of thing. I'm sort of perfecting everything a bit at a time, and then just bringing it together. So it's the last bit is the easy bit, you know. But it's not for everybody, and I say it doesn't suit every kit, and I wouldn't do that on. I've got some kits that I wouldn't do, go to these lengths on, or spend this amount of time on, really. So in terms of build hours, I think I'm up to literally about 110, 112 hours now, actual hours building and painting, which is quite a lot, considering that's all I've done. It doesn't look very much, does it? You know, you put it next to your paint pot, you're thinking 112 hours. Can't be joking. But there's a lot of effort gone into, you know, little things like the fiddly seat belts and getting the buckles through, and jeez, pre-preparing everything, multiple touch-ups to get the pilots right, and so on and so forth. And that's just the way I do it. I take my time. I include in my time all the time that cleans the airbrush, and I clean the airbrush after every single colour. So, you know, I do that one. I won't leave the airbrush, even though it's gone, even though I blow it through, I won't leave it. And I always find there's a lot of crud on it, and so it takes 10-15 minutes to clean the airbrush, you know, properly. Every time I have a different colour. I once spoke to Phil Flory about this, and he said I never clean my airbrush in one of his shows. And I met him at Telford, and I said, "You're very dirty, aren't you? You don't clean your airbrush." And he said, "Peter, I don't need. I've got 7. I've got one for every day of the week." Well, I've only got 1, you see. Well, I've actually got the Fender one. Anyway, less than about that, the better. It's okay for a beginner's airbrush for introduction, but it's not premium product. So I've got my Iwata, and I have spares for it, of course. And I literally give it like an MOT for every single colour. It's very rare that I go from one colour, even if it's clear, one colour to the next without cleaning it out, because it just bungs up quite quickly, and I just don't think you get the same performance, you know. Anyway, please don't feel that you have to do what I do. It's not for everybody. It depends on how much time you've got and how much you care. It depends on the model, whether you'll see some of this detail or not. With this Mosquito, though, you're going to see a lot of it in terms of through the windows, because there's a lot of glass house, isn't there, on the cockpit on this. So I think it merits it, you know. But on other versions, as I say, if it was a cheaper kit, I wouldn't go to these lengths. And I'd do it a different way. And I think that's what it's all about. Same as with the aftermarket. Think carefully, you know, if I could have saved quite a bit of time and money Certainly 30, 40 pounds possibly on some of the aftermarket I bought for this. I didn't really need, to be honest. And it just adds to the build stress. And it's now, everybody's been saying to me, well, why hasn't he done any more on this Mosquito? What's holding him back? And most of it's been psychological. Time's been a factor, sure, but that's not a good enough excuse, really. Most of it has been psychological, I think. Thinking, I don't know how to go about this. I cannot formulate the plan in my head of how to go about which parts to use for that, and whether to use the end one and whether to use the other one, the Barracuda, or do I stick with the kit parts? And it's like, jeez, just making life difficult for yourself. And we all end up with all this stuff at the end. I mean, here's me, I'm going to have the entire fret apart from one piece, I think, unused. And it's crazy, it doesn't actually profit you anything. And as I say, when you've got something so well engineered as this, you literally don't need them. You don't need them. Simpler and smaller kits, I think they come into their own a bit more, but I think on what is basically a Rolls-Royce model kit, I think it was perhaps a mistake for me to try and... It's like box ticking in your head, well, I've got to have the aftermarket instruments, and I've got to have the Barracuda gun shoots, and I need to have the guns. They're the guns you do need, because they are superior for sure. But the rest of it, no, I don't think you needed anything extra really. Maybe the decals. I have noticed one typical thing with Tamiya on the decals, not so much their thickness, but they do have a little, especially on these small ones, like the little anti-magnetic circles, the yellow circles here, things like that, and one or two little instruments that were single ones. They always have an excess of carrier film. You need to trim that off, and it's a tricky job. But they are problematic, especially when you're trying to get the instruments in and things like that, because it stops it going into the bezel. So, yeah, Tamiya, we are talking Tamiya 2014 here. Also, there's one or two little areas, tiny areas, where the instructions were not as good then as they are now, where they don't show you after you've fitted something what it should look like. And in particular, I got really panicky about this spot here, which I thought I'd done wrong, and I haven't in fact. If you look at the back of the navigator's seat, there's a gap. There's a little gap here. And when I showed it previously, I just put it up there, not glued. And I butted it up. And it was right up against this little bulkhead here. There was no gap there. And then when I saw the pictures, now I've glued it, I thought, oh my God, I've done it wrong. I've done it wrong. When I looked at my own pictures, I thought it shouldn't have a gap. But in actual fact, it has been with the glue. It's seated into its natural position with the little plug, and it is in fact correct. And I've only realised this by checking photos of other builds, and I've now satisfied myself that it is actually right. So it just goes to show you. But I'm mentioning that because it's not very clear in the instructions. If I show it you, it's not overly clear. Just show this last one. It's just here. They could have gone a little bit more on the, like they do now, and like Zokimura do, and Airfix in fact. Just showing a little bit more clarity here. Well, it shows it there going in with the arrows. The arrow. It doesn't actually show exactly how it aligns, and there's no other photo or illustration after that shows it even from that angle. So you've got no guide. Thankfully, the actual engineering is slightly better than the instructions. In that it does naturally drop into the right position, thank goodness. But they could just improve that a little bit. And I know on the later kits like the Tomcat, they now show these photos of after, showing the alignment, things like that. It doesn't leave you quite in the dark, So it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty close. The fit of these things and those instruments, it's an absolute revelation. It's pure genius, really. The only fit problems I've had, I had a couple of issues where, because I have a total POS modeler, painting on the sprue, because I have adapted this way of pre-painting, unlike in the book where they hadn't painted till later. That's the one advantage. Your tolerances are perfect. Mine weren't quite perfect. I had a couple of parts that didn't sit in properly because of the build effect of the paint. So because of that, I had to have another go and use the adhesive to just slightly melt off. It was actually the mounting point where the pedal brackets mount for the rudder pedals. and it was just that tiny bit of paint build meant that it didn't sit in properly, and I did realise in the end. I thought it looked wrong when I looked at the photographs of the other kits. So there we go. Anyway, so I hope you found it interesting. Until next time, thank you very much for joining me, and we will have an update for you hopefully in about a month's time. Lots more to come. Got some very interesting review kits to see. There'll be quite a few of them because there's a bit of a backlog building up because I had some delivered which I haven't done yet, so you have to bear with me. But good to be back, and thank you very much for watching. Hope you thought it was an interesting update, and until next time, stay tuned because part 6 will be coming along very soon, probably in February, and also we'll have the Nantwich Universal Model Show coming up then as well. I know one or two of you coming along to that, which is my local show. Something to look forward to. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me. Take care of yourselves in the meantime, and until next time, happy modelling, take care, thanks a lot, and bye for now.